Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Nancy Drew, The Haunted Carousel. Chapter 5, The Lead Horse. Flirting with danger, Bess echoed, then turned to her friend aghast. Oh, Nancy. Even Nancy was taken aback. Were they really that dangerous? She asked Officer Doyle. They sure were. The gentleman here is Detective Mike Norris from the St. Louis Police Department. He can tell you all about them. As Nancy flashed a quizzical smile at Doyle's companion, the park policeman suddenly realized they had not yet introduced her properly. Oh, sorry, Mike. If you haven't guessed already, this is Nancy Drew, a very clever young lady. She's mighty good at solving mysteries. Not bad at coloring pickpockets either, I hear. The detective grinned as he took Nancy's hand. Luckily, I have friends to help me, including Bess Marvin here, Nancy said modestly and introduced her companion to the two officers. One of those older crooks you saw yesterday was an escaped con named Fingers Malone, Detective Norris told the girls. He was the little scrawny one. He's an expert dip and also a fugitive from the state penitentiary. He served 20 years of a 25-year sentence, then he broke out. Who is that big man? Nancy asked. He looked quite vicious. He is. His name's Baldy Krebs, and he's got a violent record. Fingers joined up with him after breaking out of the pen. They were almost caught at a park in St. Louis, but Krebs wounded the officer who tried to arrest them, and then they got away. I take it they got away yesterday, too? Nancy said to Officer Doyle. He nodded regretfully. Yes, I almost lost them outside the park. They split up. Krebs hopped on a passing bus and got away before I could signal the driver to stop. Malone gave me the slip by darting across the street through the traffic. Doyle added that after the turning in his report at the station house, he realized that the pair's description matched that of two wanted criminals, so that the St. Louis Police Department was notified. And that's why you came here? Nancy asked Detective Norris. Right, I just flew in this morning. Pickpockets usually operate in crowds, so we're hoping that they may show up here at Riverside Park again. Taking a couple of wanted posters from his inside coat pocket, Norris unfolded them to show the two girls and went on. With Krebs, of course, purse snatching and pickpockets are just a sideline. Most of the crimes he's wanted for are more serious, like armed robbery. But Fingers Malone almost seems to have a fancy for amusement parks. Funny thing, Officer Doyle put in. This morning we got an anonymous phone tip by a caller who claimed to have seen Fingers Malone and Baldy in Riverside Park. So that's another reason for believing they may be skulking around here again today. We'll keep our eyes open, Nancy promised. Well, we just want to warn you to be careful. Have a good time, girls. Both policemen smiled at Nancy and Bess and walked off. The two girls sauntered on the carousel. It was a lovely, warm summer day, and as they approached, the air was filled with the merry-go-round music and the shouts with laughter of the children riding with the horses and other carved animals. Leo Novak was nowhere in sight. His teenage assistant was running the concession by himself. Nancy didn't bother to speak to him. He wanted time to inspect the horses slowly and without interruption. What are you looking for, Nancy? I really don't know. I'm not even sure which horses those fellows were examining last night, except they were the outer circle. The pretty young sleuth tapped her forefinger against her lips while thinking, Guess we'll just have to look for anything unusual, or see if they show any sign of tampering. Okay, I'm going to take the other side of the merry-go-round. Bess turned and began walking around with the whirling riders. When the carousel stopped and the children had gotten off, both girls stopped onto the platform to examine the horses more closely. It was tedious, but soon they'd have looked over every mount in the outer circle. Neither girl had noticed anything out of the ordinary. As Nancy stood up, deep in thought, someone came up to her and spoke. Excuse me, but aren't you Miss Nancy Drew? Nancy looked up and saw a gray-haired man in a safari jacket. She nodded. I read that you're investigating this haunted carousel mystery, he went on. Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Arno Franz. Nancy accepted his handshake. After he had been introduced to Bess, Franz marked, I guess I looked a little out of place among all you young people, but I love amusement parks. They're so bright and cheerful. I agree, Nancy smiled. Since I retired, I've traveled all over the country visiting them, Franz went on, but I'm what you might call an amusement park buff. In fact, I'm writing a book on them someday. I certainly have enough material. Really? If you ever do, let us know, Bess enthused. Sounds like it would be fun to read. Nancy was struck by a thought. Do you know much about carousels? Well, I'd like to think I do. For instance, this one, the Wonderland Gallop, is quite old and still has the original carousel horses. Beautiful, aren't they? Well, how old are they? Bess asked. Well, they go back to the early 1920s, I would say, or perhaps even earlier than that, Arno Franz answered. But did you notice that the lead horse is different in style from the others? Which probably means it was a replacement. Lead horse? Nancy queried. What do you mean? That refers to the fanciest horse on the carousel, one most ornately decorated. Oh, I see what you mean. They're all beautifully trimmed, but the black one does stand out. It's exquisite, Bess agreed. Not only did the trappings include flashing silver armor and a gold-plated harness, but its bridle and mane were decorated with rosebuds, and its saddle was bordered by carved cherubs. And yet, in spite of all the fancy ornamentation, said Franz, in some ways it's not really as beautiful as the other horses. For instance, it's not as spirit-looking as a lead horse should be, and the outer surface is really smooth and uninteresting. I mean, it lacks the loving attention to detail that the carver lavished on the other horses. You're right, I haven't noticed that before, but I can see right now that you pointed it out, Nancy said thoughtfully. So if this is of official workmanship, it probably wasn't one of the original carousel animals? Exactly, Franz nodded. The wild idea occurred to me that the time the lead horse was replaced, the carousel's operating machinery might have been tampered with. And that may explain why it turns on and off and shuts off by itself at night. Right, the gray-haired man smiled and shrugged apologetically. As I say, it's just a thought, but I figured I'd mention it. Thanks, I'm glad you did, Nancy responded. It may be a clue worth following up. After Arno Franz had said goodbye to the two girls, Nancy walked up to the youth who was running the merry-go-round and asked where she could find Leo Novak. He's probably in his trailer eating lunch, the assistant replied. It's that blue and white one over there in the camping space among the trees. The nearest light pole. Nancy thanked him for the information, and she and Bess walked over to the trailer, which she had pointed out. Leo Novak answered the first knock. Oh, it's you, Nancy Drew, he said, recognizing the girl. Find out anything new about what happened last night? No, I was hoping you might have. When Novak shook his head, Nancy went on. Did you examine the carousel after I left? Yes, but there was nothing out of order. Nancy eyed the concessionaire reflectively. Mr. Novak, I've been told that the lead horse on your carousel has only been replaced. That the one on there now is not the original. Novak frowned. Why, yes, that's right, he answered slowly. The lead horse got damaged and had to be replaced. A truck hauling trash out of the park skidded into it, but if you think that had anything to do with what happened last night or any of the other nights, forget it. The truck incident occurred several years ago, but the spooky on and off thing at night only began very recently. I see. Nevertheless, Nancy was still not willing to ascribe the weird phenomenon to ghostly causes. Whatever the explanation, she was convinced that something must have been done to the operating machine to make the carousel turn on and off, apparently by itself. Mr. Novak, would you permit me to have an engineer check out the carousel? Leo Novak hesitated, then shrugged his shoulders grudgingly. Well, okay, this whole stupid business is a pain in the neck. Thanks, Mr. Novak. It won't cost you a thing, Nancy told him. Goodbye for now. Nancy and Bess walked back along the midway, heading for the park exit. Suddenly, Nancy gasped as she saw a skinny figure in the distance. What's the matter? Bess asked. Look, there's Fingers Malone. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.